Hey everyone, welcome back to the pac-south podcast. Pat, we are recording here on a Sunday, a little bit out of the norm for us, but it's given us some kind of insane news between Wednesday and Sunday. Two teams now have joined Division One FBS football: North Dakota State to the Mountain West, Sacramento State to the MAC. One of these teams been a long time coming. The Bison have been so good in FCS, so many national titles. I feel like everyone saw this and was like, this is great for football. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I think in a way, like North Dakota State had, I don't want to say like outgrown FCS, but I think for their program in terms of like navigating this new era of football, retaining high level talent, making that jump to the Mountain West is huge for them because, I mean, right away, if you look at how the new Mountain West is structured, I know that they'll be on that temporary restriction where they can't technically play in the playoff and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But this is a team that could win the Mountain West year one, right? I mean, obviously New Mexico's competition, obviously Hawaii's competition, but besides that, pretty wide open in this new
Mhm.
look Mountain West. So I think this is a great move for North Dakota State. And I think it's a really smart choice to align themselves with a conference like the Mountain West that has a little bit more pedigree. As like a non-power conference than say the MAC or I don't know. I doubt that they would go to like Sun Belt football, but something like that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think this is going to create a lot of opportunities for North Dakota State and also that region that's kind of a desert or has been a desert for FBS football for so long. Uh, I would be shocked if in the next 5 years we don't also see a South Dakota State, a Montana State, and maybe even Idaho coming back into FBS football, which would then obviously change that whole landscape of the area. Would they all go into the
Definitely.
Mountain West? How would that affect the resurgence of the Pac-12?
Yeah.
Um, it would have a lot of questions, but obviously the door is now opening for them,
Mhm.
and obviously also a Western team, but not in a Western conference. Sacramento State, they've been pouring so much money in that program, and they were just clearly they saw North Dakota State's news and they were like, we're going to go up this year one way or another. They go to the MAC. I think it's so funny the way that they released the news. The MAC was we're going to stay at 13 teams. Not sure why anyone would want to stay at an odd number like that, but they're staying there with Northern Illinois jumping ship to the Mountain West. Um, do we think that this is a good fit? I mean, obviously, they're going to be spending a lot of money here in the next couple seasons. They
Yeah.
already knew that. Can they compete? Is there enough opening in that MAC conference? I mean, now Toledo, they lose their longtime head coach. That could open up a stage. Miami, Ohio, depending on what year. I mean, it's the MAC.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this was like more a decision of, let's say, opportunity or decision of circumstance for Sac State. They were pushing really, really hard to get into the new look Pac-12 for the
Mhm.
past like 2 years, and they were repeatedly shut down by the Pac-12, kind of saying no, like we're all good there. So I think this is how they're looking at it, at least a chance for them to kind of prove, okay, we can field a competent FBS program, and if they find success, potentially now that door swings open for them to slide into the new look Pac 12, right? Because now they can say, all right, well, we've moved up to this level, we've improved our facilities, we're doing this in terms of recruited production on the field. Like, how about now, Pac 12? Can you let us in? And I think, especially given the regionality of things, that would make a lot of sense if they do find success. But I don't see this as like an immediate success story like North Dakota State. I'm sure they'll be fine. I'll say year one because the MAC is so confusing every single year.
Yeah.
um, but I'm not saying that they're going to win, let's say, enough games to be bowl eligible, right? They'll probably be in, I'd say, like that 4 to 5 win territory, unless something truly unexpected happens here. But like you said, this is a team that's been pushing in terms of investment in the program to take that next leap and take that next step. So good for them for making that jump up to FBS. And I don't know, it's interesting. It seemed like CUSA had been taking on like a lot of these teams that were coming
Yeah.
up. So it's nice to see some of the other group of 5 teams or group of 5 conferences take it in these FCS teams that, especially in the case of North Dakota State, are super, super talented.
Yeah. I want to offer it would kind of be like a nightmare situation, I think, for current conferences. But if we bring in all these northern teams, like I brought up, and like let's also say like an Idaho State comes up as well, could we see the elevation of say like a Big Sky conference uh,
Mhm.
into FBS and have a lot of these like new teams coming in? Sacramento State obviously getting their start in the MAC, but don't know how long they want to do that with all those travel costs. I believe they
Yeah.
kind of pulled an SMU and we're kind of like, we'll pay our way.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do that forever. So could this Big Sky then attract like Sacramento State, all that? Do we think that that's possible? Otherwise, you're going to be like, we already have a lot of super conferences in the East. You have
For sure.
16 in the SEC, you have 18 in the Big Ten. I believe there's 15 in the ACC. Getting really crowded out there. The West doesn't have that yet, but if all these northern schools come in, next thing you know, the Mountain West could be sitting on 16. Pac-12 could be back at 16,
Yeah.
like your old hypotheticals. Do you think that that's a possibility?
I could see that happening, especially since the Big Sky already fields a conference in terms of like, obviously there's no FBS or FCS for college basketball, but Big Sky already competes in Division I basketball, so it would be like a fairly easy, let's say, transition process, right? Like all you would have to do is say, all right, our conference is now an FBS conference instead of FCS. And I think like while that would be great for schools like Montana, Montana State, Idaho, Idaho State, um, I don't know, schools like Weber State, like that makes it a little difficult for them, right? Because you know that you are not going to compete with the size of that school at the FBS level, right? FCS is your level. So now you have a decision to make. Am I going to stick with the Big Sky as they make this transition? Or do I now need to find a new conference for maybe just my football team to remain in FCS and play Big Sky athletics for everything else? You know, I think it could complicate things for, we'll say, like those more fringy programs that probably wouldn't find a tremendous amount of success in the FBS. Um, because, you know, this transition isn't easy. Like we've seen a lot of teams find success with it in recent years, but jury's still out in terms of sustained success, right? Like not SMU, Sam Houston State had that really, really strong season, I guess 2 years ago, technically at this point, in 2024. Then last year in 2025, it was a complete disaster, right? Who knows what's going to happen with Kennesaw State? They were really, really bad their first year up. Great year with Jerry Mack this year. Can he continue that? Are they going to regress, right? What's Delaware going to do? It seems like James Madison's really been like our only recent come up who sustained that success on a prolonged period, right? And I think North Dakota State will do that as well. But I don't know, like, can these programs still, let's say, like, fund adequately an FBS football program in comparison to FCS, right? Where obviously, like, revenue sharing and things like that are much more limited on the FCS level. And that's a bigger conversation and bigger discussion when we get into FBS football.
Yeah. And we touched on it a little bit at the end of last week's episode. But I think one thing going from SCS to FBS that could benefit these teams, and it's a long shot, and it's kind of just dreamlike that I'm even bringing this up. But as long as you have one guy who gets the correct attention for their program,
True.
puts in the money, as long as they can sustain a little bit of money and it's not just a flash in the pan, could you have, I mean, this is all hypothetical, but the Mr. Beast ECU situation at, say, like a Sacramento State, is it going
Yeah.
to be one of those where you get a guy, it's like, okay, they're FCS to FBS now. We can win a national title. All right, I'm going to commit however many $1 million a year. You get one or two other guys to back that up. Next thing you know, you have a pretty well-funded program that could field some success. So it should be interesting to see if any of these programs that are exploring this avenue, if they are like, okay, we have this in the bag, we need to act on this, or at least know it's behind us.
Yeah.
So interesting there. Um, yeah, we'll see if anything else happens with football. But now we are back to basketball. March Madness, obviously, right around the corner, and we're starting to feel it a little bit here in February. Um, hence why we have conference realignment. The madness goes to every sport, but we're starting to see like a lot of upsets in this conference play. I think everyone's one settled in, but then two, like the nerves are getting there. We're getting to the end of the season. You're having a lot of these big matchups, but then trap games right before or hangover games right after, and they're really getting a lot of teams right now. And we're starting to see some Cinderellas emerge. A team that really not emerging, but a Cinderella of Miami, Ohio. They're the last undefeated team
Yeah.
left. They just got to win against Ohio, which we'll talk about that game in a few moments. But any other Cinderellas kind of popping up on your radar?
I don't know. I guess you could call them a Cinderella just because of the conference that they play in, but I feel like St. Louis is one of those teams where they're really excuse me, strong overall. And they've had a fantastic season this year. You know what I mean? They're like running through the A10 with limited struggles. They're 24-1. I feel like this is a team, while yes, they are ranked 18th, they're still probably going to get slotted into one of those like mid-level seeds, right? Like they're probably looking at like a 6 seed or a 7 seed where they're going to get a solid major conference team in the first round, or like a solid conference champion from a lesser conference in the first round. That might cause some people to be like, like, where are we going from here? But I think St. Louis is primed for, I'd say, a Sweet 16 run. I don't know how much further than that, because then you really do start going up against the elite teams in college basketball. But this is definitely a team that can make some noise that first weekend in March. Well, of the tournament. Sorry, not technically first weekend in March, but definitely a team that can make some noise that first weekend on either Thursday or Friday with their first round game, and then Saturday or Sunday with their second round game. I don't know. I feel like VCU, if they can backdoor their way in, they're a pretty solid team to keep your
Yeah.
eye on as well. Because again, A10's not really getting like a ton of buzz this year, and they're quietly, I think they're 11-2 in conference. I want to say something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So like they're quietly putting together a really strong season. Of course, you've got your Mountain West teams with San Diego State, Utah State, that are both putting together really strong conference seasons. So I don't know. I'd look to probably the A10 or the Mountain West to have like our sleeper team. But also look out for Belmont. You know, they've been in a little bit of a funk in the Missouri Valley recently. I know that they've got a big game against Murray State today. I think it's at 6 that one tips off. But they're, I think, 23-4 or 24-3. I know they've lost 2 in conference play. Forget how many they lost out of conference. But Belmont's another team. They can shoot really, really well, and sometimes that's all you need in March.
Yeah. I love the Utah State call out there. They have been kind of that like consistent thorn in the side to the point where you can't even like ignore them. Like definitely on the grand scale of the like country, it's not, the marquee team right now, especially when you think of that state. I mean, it's still BYU. BYU is
Yeah.
the premier team. But if you look at what Utah State has done in the Mountain West this season, I mean, they blow out a decent New Mexico team on the road. They go to Boise State. They take over that arena. Not to mention another couple good wins in there as well. So, I mean, the Aggies play very good basketball. Um, we'll go to last week's picks here. We're actually going to follow up on them finally. And this is kind of a great showcase of us talking about some of the upsets. Yes, they're still high caliber upsets, but we had Duke UNC on the table. Duke has been kind of running through everyone this season. They look amazing. Well, then they play UNC, and this is a UNC team that is better for sure than they have been lately.
Definitely.
But still not, at least what I associate with UNC. Well, they got it done. UNC took that. We both took Duke. So big miss for us there, but a nice upset for UNC against their in-state rival. We split with Houston and BYU, as we mentioned, the premier team of the Beehive State. But Houston gets it done. that was a very nice team. I think Houston has a chance of going very deep in March this year again. And this was a great marquee win for them last week. So we take a split there. Over in women's basketball, we both ran with the Bruins, and the Bruins in a very close game get it done against Michigan 69-66. Um, we then split in Madison Square Garden. St. John's with the upset over UConn. Again, yes, UConn is number 3. After last year, I'm still not sold on UConn, even though they are definitely kind of back up to that number 1 step that they were. But to me, it's step 1B versus 1A because that UConn team was so good. And it's one of those things where even they haven't fallen off fully for me. So when you're still up there, you're still comparing it to the best. It's a little bit tougher. So I went with the
Yeah.
Johnnies, Pat with the Huskies. Johnnies get it done. And then our game of the week last week, we split again. So a very, very contentious week for us. Sparty in a great game in overtime. They beat the Illini, a team that I'm also very high on with the Cougars. So Michigan State gets that one done. I should have tallied up. I did not. So now I'm having to do everything right now. Pat, Owen, 1, 2. So Pat 2-3. Myself, I guess that would mean 3-2, right? 0-1,
Yeah, because
1-1,
we split.
2-1, 3-1, 3-2. Yes, all right. 2-3 to 3-2. That's a nice little record for going against each other, but we definitely don't want that to be our picks. And I wish that we did the show on Wednesday for our picks because I would have gone 4-0, but of course we did not record, so they don't really count. But we'll talk about what we would have picked in analysis here in a few moments. We will go into our Pac-South basketball conference standings now. Just going over the top 3 this weekend, I'll list off our point totals and rankings, and I'll let you discuss if there are any kind of shocking things here. I wouldn't say so, especially after last weekend, but our men's basketball top 3, Duke with 226 points, Iowa State behind 50 points, 176, and then Florida 166, Iowa State 176. So big gap between first and second for men's basketball. Women's basketball, you have South Carolina with 209 points, Duke 140, Washington in there with 116. So again, first and second place, a large gap. But Duke basketball getting it done, both men's and women's. These are updated as of February 9th. So 6 days from recording, they are always updated every Monday. Anything out of the ordinary? I mean, large gaps between first and second there.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Iowa State will probably close that gap a little bit. They obviously had a big win yesterday over number 9 Kansas, which I know we haven't tallied this weekend's results yet, so that should give them a little bit of a boost and like eat into that point differential a little bit.
Indeed. Yep.
Because Clemson did lose to Duke, but Clemson's obviously not as highly ranked as, or were not as highly ranked as Kansas was. So I know there will be like a little bit of a differential there. I don't know, especially for like men's basketball. I feel like what will really shape things is how the conference tournaments play out. Like, yes,
Sure.
Duke slipped against UNC, but I think they're still probably the clear favorite for the ACC title.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would say the Big 12 is kind of like wide open right now. You know, Arizona's lost 2 straight games. So they're kind of coming back to the pack a little bit. Houston's Houston. Iowa State's rebounded after losing 2 games in the middle of the regular season there. Kansas is putting together a really solid season despite Darren Peterson kind of picking and choosing when he wants to play. So I don't know, like Iowa State, if they can win the Big 12 tournament and if, I don't know, something happens where Duke slips up a little bit, we're definitely going to see that compress even more in terms of a gap. But I can't say I'm too shocked with our standings outside of maybe Washington being top 3 for women's basketball. I did not realize they were having that strong of a women's basketball season.
They did get into the top 25 the other week. I think that they unfortunately took a bad result
Mm.
yesterday. I can't remember exactly. It was Minnesota, I believe, that they played. Um, but yeah, Washington and they're at 116. But I mean, first to second, there's almost 100 point, or first to third, there's almost 100 point gap
Yeah.
in women's basketball, which is quite large. Obviously, South Carolina with a massive win over LSU. That is another game that we will talk about here in a moment. That will certainly help their standings. Something I want to note, or two things I want to note rather: men's basketball, first place to last place, Duke and Central Michigan. There is a 205 point gap
Ooh,
between the teams. So that
tough.
is
Tough.
very, very bad for the Chippewas. I don't really see them having any kind of a chance, but you never know. March Madness creates a lot of opportunities for
True.
teams,
True.
but I would not put my money there. You mentioned the Big 12, obviously. UCF is not just outside, but they are the fourth place team behind Florida. I believe it is about a 30 point gap in between them. And St. Louis, who's having a great season, they're in fifth with our standings, the way our points are awarded.
Dang.
They are in fifth behind UCF, and that's with UCF kind of struggling with their bigger
Yeah.
Big 12 games. They've been able to get a few wins in there, like a good win against Texas Tech, but then they follow that up with a pretty disappointing loss to a
I mean, Houston's very
maybe
good.
resurging Cincinnati team,
Yeah.
but certainly did not start the season very well. So very interesting there. I would be shocked if, say, like Florida, I would be tempted to say that they may finish the regular season second. We'll see how conference tournaments
Yeah.
wind up. But I
Yeah.
mean, this Gator team looks very good once again. So I could see them being second. I just don't know if anyone could catch up to Duke before we get to March. So interesting stuff there. And then we will have another sport to go over every week next week, and that is baseball. Opening day was on Friday, I believe. I think there may have been a Thursday game, but for the most part, everyone was playing on Friday. Um, we have three teams in our conference that are ranked as of D1Baseball.com. Oregon State at 12, Florida at 13, and Florida State at 16. Um, Florida gets the series win against UAB. Kind of not the way you want to start the weekend, though. It was 2 out of 3. They lose their Friday night game. I believe it was 7-1. So not really how you want to start off your season for the Gators. Florida State, I'm blanking on who that they were playing because I was watching a lot of
I
that
think it was
game.
JMU.
It was JMU, and I'm pretty sure they put up like 16 on the Saturday game.
Yeah, and I
Obviously,
think I want to
a
say their
lot of
game
these.
today got canceled.
With the rain.
Yeah, because it's raining all over the southeast right now. Like we're getting it pretty hard here in South Carolina.
Yeah, I know a lot of teams. Florida was one of them where they did 2 games on Saturday
Mm.
to get in the whole series. South Carolina did 2 games on Friday to get in their whole series. South Carolina, a team that traditionally has been pretty good. Lately, not so much. This is a massive year for that program. I think that if they can't get it done with Molinari, as you're wearing the Gamecock crest right there, or Maneri, excuse me, if they can't get it done, I really don't know where that program's going to go. It may be a long time before they see the success that they had previously. But 2 out of 3 against Northern Kentucky. Seemed like Northern Kentucky has some pretty good arms. Definitely not the bats you want to see. But getting an opening season win is great. UCF continuing what they've been doing lately against, I think it was Siena. They look very good offensively once again. I think that that's a team that you can consistently look to and go, they could put up 8 runs any given day.
Yeah.
And they're a very good baseball program. They've had it going for the last 10 years. I would be shocked to say that Knights were not in the top 5 of our conference this upcoming year. We're going to bring back the buying and selling segment, but no selling because there's nothing to sell yet. But Pat, I want to buy 3 teams for this upcoming baseball season, and we'll kind of ride these. We might have a couple selling opportunities later on, but of our pac-south conference, who are the 3 teams that you want to buy?
All right. I'm gonna go with 2 teams that are probably like conventional buys, and then one who's I'll say like a buy low candidate. So one of my buys is going to be Florida State. I think that, Florida State is consistently right there at the top of the ACC every single year in baseball. Um, yes, they always have trouble breaking through once they get to the CWS, and either getting out of regionals or once they get to Omaha, the wheels tend to come off the bus. But this is a consistent, solid producing, we'll say, baseball program at Florida State. So I've no qualms about picking them. I'm also going to go Oregon State. I know you and I kind of talked like it might be very hard for them to rack up a tremendous amount of points prior to the
Yes.
CWS since they're an independent this year for baseball. Um, and that's going to make things super, super weird, especially once we get into conference play time because they're not going to be able to have these like bigger matchups against teams
Mhm.
like UCLA that we're kind of accustomed to seeing. But nonetheless, the Beavs, again, really solid program. They're consistently right there in Omaha or at least making a super regional. So feel pretty confident taking them. And then my buy low is going to be South Carolina, actually. I don't
Oh,
think that there's a ton of national buzz around this team. Projections, not
yeah.
great. Kind of middle of the SEC to sort of lower half, based on most of the baseball projections that I've kind of seen online so far. But like you said, this is a team where there's a lot of transfers, a lot of turnover from
A lot of
last year's
transfers.
disappointing season. Kind of the thing that hurt South Carolina last year was a lack of consistent arm depth. Like that team scored a decent amount of runs. It's just outside of the top two starters, it was like, are we going to give up 2 runs? Or are we going to give up 10 runs? So I think South Carolina, there's a lot of pressure on that baseball program to succeed, particularly given the positive traction that was around Mineri after he was hired. Like people were like, okay, he had tons of success at LSU, and year one was an abject failure. I think anybody close to the program would admit that as well. So as you mentioned, year two is a huge year, right? Like this is a pivot year. It's either you're going to sort of restore, probably not the levels that we saw with Ray Tanner in the early 2010s, but like restore that consistent production of expecting at least um, a regional or super regional appearance out of this team, or you're going to slide even further into irrelevancy, right? And Jeremiah Donati might be having to look for a new baseball coach in addition to a new men's basketball coach. So this is definitely a make or break year for the Gamecocks. And because of that, I'm putting limited faith and limited stock, but still faith into them.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned the arms from last year. They're already down their ace to start the year with Tommy John. I believe it was about a week or 10 days prior to the season opener. So not great for the Gamecocks there. You mentioned Oregon State. One, we texted about this. It's not a conference series because why would it be? They have a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. I can't remember who is. I think it's San Diego. They're off Sunday. And then they have a Monday, Tuesday series against Washington State. I have no idea what that's about. I don't know why they wouldn't just have a regular series with them, considering that was the Pac-2. Really weird. But I feel like that just kind of sums up Washington State and Oregon State athletics right now.
Yeah.
And I should have said this before I went into Oregon State. But another thing with South Carolina, they're a team that they used to be number one in that state, a very good baseball state. But now Clemson squarely ahead of them in baseball.
Yeah.
Coastal Carolina, I mean,
Catching
they've had a
up.
good
I
program
mean,
for a while. They've
yeah,
had a good program for a while, and I would say they're firmly the best team in that state right now.
right now, yeah.
And depending on the year, South Carolina may even be battling third place with Presbyterian and or College Charleston.
I was
That's
going to say
kind of the
CFC is a
state.
solid program.
Yeah, that's kind of the state of Gamecock baseball right now. That you're not playing for number one, you're playing for number three, which is very unfortunate. Obviously, they have Clemson coming up in a few weeks. Should be interesting how that goes. I think both Carolina and Clemson have missed Coastal this year, but
Yes.
depending on where people finish in the regular season, very well could be going to Conway for a regional. Uh, so I will go with my buys now. We did not uh, have any similar ones. Matter of fact, the only similar take you could have would have been you going Florida State, and I went with Florida.
Mm,
I think that Florida could do really good things in the SEC. Obviously, I did mention not the way that you want to start the year, but they at least still got the series win against UAB. I'm hoping that that was just more of a case of it's the first game, the bats are cold, you're trying to get used to everyone actually playing a game, and it's not just inter squads. That's kind of what I'm going with.
fair.
Number two, going with Duke, different conference, so they're able to get a lot more points in our conference. And obviously, it's Duke. Duke won football. They're currently in first place in men's basketball. They're
Hmm.
in second place in women's basketball. They are a perennial pac-south power. So I have to go with Duke here. I feel very confident they will continue their kind of like dominant sports performances in our conference. And then my third pick, and let me say this: if we did the show on Wednesday, I'm probably buying St. Louis.
Mm.
They got swept by Ohio State. I am not buying St. Louis. Um, I'm going with possibly just as much of a wild card here. I'm going New Mexico,
Ooh,
another different conference team, so we can get a lot of different points. We're not really taking points away from anyone. Whereas, like, you have Florida going against Florida State, UCF, South Carolina going against other teams in that region, like Charlotte.
for sure.
But New Mexico, I think that they can be decent. And it's one of those things where I'm not really buying them to win the conference or to win a national title this year. It's just more to have a good performance. I think that they'll finish in the top third of the Mountain West, which should be enough points to say be a top five finish in our conference.
Hmm.
Um, that's kind of more what I see out of the Lobos.
It's
So
fair.
I'm going Florida, Duke, and New Mexico. And separate pick, Charlotte doesn't finish in the bottom three in this sport. They finally break the trend. I feel very confident in them. They obviously finished, what was it, 1 point in football? Yes,
Yeah.
1 point in football. They are currently second to last with 46 points in men's basketball. And women are fourth to last.
Oh,
Excuse me.
oh.
Um,
I was
fourth to
like, oh,
last
that's pretty good.
in women's basketball, but I will say there is only a 9 point difference between fourth to last and last. So fingers
Not great.
crossed on how everything updates for them this week. So they're right there on the fringe. They could be not bottom three in two sports. I don't know. I think the baseball program's okay this year. They should be able to be respectable enough.
Yeah.
So enough with baseball and unfortunately trouncing on the 49ers. But we will now go into what would have been predictions, but analysis. Our first game was Ohio versus the Miami of Ohio. Red Hawks, as we mentioned earlier, the only undefeated team left in college basketball. This is a great story. I believe they tied their best program start, which is kind of crazy. The Red Hawks have been able to get this far. I mean,
Yeah.
they've been good historically, but I mean, having 25 wins in a row to start a year,
It's tough.
uh, yeah, very tough, pretty remarkable. It does not matter who you're playing. The fact that you can do that many times in a row is great. I believe they ended up putting a beat down on the Bobcats. I
Yeah, they
need to
beat him
actually,
pretty comfortably.
yeah, I really wish we could have had the picks in for this one. I think going into it when I initially like used it as a pick, I was like, Ohio's not horrible. This could be one of those games where Miami sleeps into it. And this could be the upset, but I don't know why that went away. Yeah, it was a 90-74 game. It was
Mm.
in Miami. Um, yeah, very. Oh, my technology is not going well. This is great. Glad that we do this semi live. Um, Yeah, 25-0. As I mentioned, I would be shocked if they don't move up a couple points in the standings. Looking at their schedule coming up, very, very, very favorable for the Red Hawks. Last good team in uh, the month of February for them is probably Bowling Green. They
Yeah.
play the East and West Michigans. Not great basketball there, and then they will finish out the season with 500 Toledo and a 500 Ohio once again. So
I think they got UMass sprinkled in there too somewhere.
UMass right before
Bowling
um,
Green.
Bowling Green.
Yeah.
So I mean, best two teams left are the next two games. As long as they don't fall asleep, I really like their chances of running the table in the regular season. That being said, do you want to? Do you want to run the table like that? Because I mean, you have the conference tournament coming up. You don't really want to lose in that. And in a way, you don't have to, but in a way, sometimes it's good to get that like taste defeat in your mouth. You're like, this sucks. I hate this. Especially toward the end of the season when you're getting into like the tournaments, because then you have a little bit more to play for as well. I think that that could be a good thing, but of course, as a player, you don't really want to lose.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, Red Hawks, they got it done against the Bobcats. I'm sure that we'll have another game coming up for them in the next few weeks, where we will pick and go in a little bit into predictions and analysis of the team itself. But great win for the Red Hawks. A game yesterday, Valentine's Day, we had Clemson versus Duke. I mean, to me, this was just kind of Duke. I had originally picked Duke to win this game, and they did exactly what I would have expected from them against this Clemson team. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and it was a pretty close game for most of it, I would say. Then you just kind of saw Duke use their athletic advantage and their talent advantage to sort of give some space and pull away from Brad Brownell's squad a little bit near the end of that second half. I think it wound up like a 13-point win, I want to say.
It was
Um,
67-54.
yeah. So, I mean, like, it was really, really close. I believe it was a 3-point game at halftime where Duke was leading. But this Clemson team is good. So I think it's good that Duke is getting tested in conference play. Like, that will help them come March. So hopefully we don't see kind of a repeat of what we have seen out of some more recent um, Duke squads where, like, yes, they'll get through the games, but they'll struggle a little bit with, I don't know, we'll say like scrappy teams before they eventually bow out in either the Final Four or the Elite Eight. So I think it's good that Duke's going through these tests and isn't just cruising because it's helping them navigate late game situations. Um, I think Clemson's a lock for the tournament, so it's not, again, like they beat some crap team here. Another good win for Duke, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how, with our updated rankings, Arizona coming off 2 straight losses. Obviously, Michigan only has 1 overall loss. Like, what is our top 4 going to start looking like as we progress closer to the tournament? Right? Like, who are going to be our 1 seeds? I think that's the most interesting thing we have to look forward to down the regular season stretch here.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like with how Duke has been able to show up in these big games, and I mean, I think it's like they've had 13 quad one games this year.
Yeah.
And being 11-2 and that, I mean, they are so tested. The losses that they have are obviously not bad losses. I think that this is one of the better Duke teams in a couple years where coming into it, they are very tested. Not only in those tests have they like looked okay, like they've looked consistent.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's something that Duke has lost. Like, yes, the Duke will still get their big wins, but are they consistent? And I
True.
feel like this team is pretty consistent. So I like the Blue Devils. Definitely as a 1 seed. We'll have to see kind of how the ACC finishes up. But, I mean, they play a good Clemson team. They're 20th in this game. They could easily be a 5-6 seed depending on their participation in the ACC tournament. But, yeah, great win for the Blue Devils here. We had a Thursday night game going over to women's basketball, a 4-5 game. Great matchup. Texas versus Vanderbilt, and I didn't know who I wanted to take here, so I didn't take anyone because we waited. Um, I probably would have leaned Texas, right? I mean, Vanderbilt had a great start to the season. They kind of came out of left field
Yeah.
for how they've been the last few seasons. Um, but Michaela Blake's, man, she's a baller. She dropped 34 that game, 9 of 19 for field goals, 13 of 15 at the line. Commodores get it done 86-70. Is this, yes, Vanderbilt just lost to Georgia this morning, an unranked team, so very, very much a hangover game. But do we think that this Vanderbilt performance against Texas, can we expect them to do that in, say, the SEC tournament and
Mm.
the NCAA tournament? Or was this a Thursday night flash in the pan? Because then they come out and immediately have this performance against the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, we should expect fairly consistent play out of Vanderbilt. They've been good all season. I think more so what today's results was kind of, I think, letting a big win sort of shape your preparation heading into a game that you kind of should have expected to win. Like Georgia's not bad. I think they've only lost 4 or 5 games this season, but obviously not ranked. And a little bit of a trap game, right? You're coming off a huge emotional victory over a top 5 team, and you kind of sleepwalk into the next opponent and they sneak up and get you. So I think that's more so what this is than anything else. And I think we can, I don't want to say like rely on or count on, but I think we can expect Vanderbilt to play better down the stretch and play better in both the SEC and NCAA tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as long as Michaela Blakes is healthy, she's not in foul trouble, I think that she's going to give the Commodores a chance to win almost every game.
Yeah.
Yeah, only a 2-point loss this game. I mean, she went to the line for 20 shots. She made 19 of them
Dang.
against Georgia today. So, I mean, she's creating scoring opportunities um, as long as she is on this side and not on the other side of those scoring
Mhm.
opportunities. Vanderbilt's got a shot every game. So, I like them to make a little bit of a tourney run here. Um, Texas, I don't know if we want to hit the alarm yet, but I mean, they beat South Carolina in a non-conference game. They turn around
Mhm.
and then lose the conference game to the Gamecocks. Big game against Vanderbilt. They lose. Texas definitely, they need to get their big games under control because if
Yeah.
they're going to be this top program and this top team and have a chance at the Final Four, they really need, I guess, to kind of show up better because I mean they still lost by 16 to Vanderbilt.
Mhm.
Um, it's not just a finish the game and get the result. It's they need to show up better as well. So Longhorns definitely need to do a little soul searching here going into the SEC tournament, getting an upset maybe in that, beating a pretty good LSU team, maybe upsetting a South Carolina team would do a lot for Longhorns' confidence going toward a national championship. Speaking of confidence toward a national championship, last year's champion, Florida, they look really good again.
Yeah.
We had the Kentucky game on this week's docket, and Florida won. They beat them by 9. I feel like you get rid of like that beginning of the season stretch for the Gators where you're like, they're lost. What are they doing? Whole different team.
Yeah.
They are easily one of the best teams in the country right now. Kentucky, I can't make up my mind on them. They are very Jekyll and Hyde to me.
Yeah.
They have some very good games, and then the next week I don't really know what to take from
Mhm.
them. So they're a very confusing team. They will definitely get like a win in March. I don't really like their chances to get past the first weekend though. But nonetheless, is this Florida team a team that we need to seriously consider as a Final Four threat?
I mean, I think they're going to be one of those teams that could make a deep run as like a 3 or a 4 seed because of the slow start that they had to this season. You know, like this is a team that did portal in quite a few guys. Boogie Fland, obviously coming from Arkansas, Xavier Lee coming from Princeton. And that takes a little bit to find that chemistry, right? And like see, okay, I played this way at my old program, but this is how Todd Golden, this is how Florida wants me to play, right? Make those adjustments and really start to gel as a team because you haven't played before. And yeah, you get some time to practice, but like practice versus in-game scenarios is obviously a different story. Um, I don't know. I think Florida is one of those teams where they're highly, highly talented. Um, and I think they're primed for a run. But I think they're also one of those teams where if you get them a little bit uncomfortable, they're prone to make some mistakes, right? Like if you're speeding them up a little bit, you can force them into turnover issues. If you're forcing Xavier Lee to be uncomfortable and make some shots that, I don't know, maybe he wasn't asked to make at Princeton, right? We saw him struggle a lot at the beginning of the season before kind of finding his footing here lately. Things like that could present issues for Florida. But I think that this is definitely one of the best teams in the SEC. I think this game, I can't remember if it's this upcoming weekend or a weeknight game, but they've got a game against Arkansas coming up this week. I think that's going to be a phenomenal game. Really show us kind of like who this team is at this stage, right? Because we know Arkansas is good, despite losing Boogie Fland. How are they going to stack up against this Florida team, and vice versa? How is Florida going to play against a really athletic and a really long Arkansas team?
Yeah. They have Arkansas in almost 2 weeks. In between that, for the Gators, it's South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Texas. So not really a lot of competition for conference play for the Gators. So all eyes will definitely be set on the Razorbacks. Depending on how Arkansas is doing at that point, obviously Florida is currently at the top. If Arkansas continues their pace, we could kind of see a regular season title matchup right there between Arkansas and Florida for the SEC. So very interesting there. I can't say I was a real big fan of Calipari going to Arkansas. The fact that he is actually doing this now with his last years in Kentucky tempering out, you could say. I thought they would be more of the same in Little Rock, Fayetteville. I but I mean, I feel like this is kind of good to see, good for basketball, for many different storyline reasons. So I still like the Gators and what they're doing, but yeah, you bring up the Arkansas. That should be a great matchup toward the end of the season. And let's not let Vanderbilt go under the radar. They're sitting right there at number 3,
Yeah,
least amount of losses out of any SEC team, just
true.
2 or 4, excuse me, in conference play.
Yeah.
But 21-4 on season. Vanderbilt basketball all around looking very good this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was probably the biggest women's matchup of the preseason, Valentine's night, South Carolina versus LSU. I didn't know this, but after yesterday's game, South Carolina has beaten LSU their last 18
I
matchups.
saw that.
You would not expect that with how good LSU has been lately. They even have a national championship. Obviously, the year that they win the national championship, Caitlin Clark in Iowa knock out South Carolina from the Final Four. So that's how they did not meet that season. But yeah, this was an incredible game all the way through. South Carolina gets the win by 7 points. It was a lot closer than a 7-point finish.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was a 1-point game with less than a minute left or somewhere in that range. Joyce Edwards for South Carolina fouls out. Just chaos and what you can only expect to be a Dawn Staley versus Kim Mulkey game. But South Carolina gets another signature win, another big time win, this one coming on the road. Are we sold on South Carolina being a challenger to UConn this year? I mean, this UConn team is good.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure they're a challenger. Um, I just hate to phrase it this way because this is how women's basketball was for such a long time. I feel like it would take a very large effort from either South Carolina, UCLA, LSU, Vanderbilt, right? Kind of like those top 5 teams because we talked about Texas sliding a little bit. Um, to beat this UConn team. I feel like this UConn team is just so complete. We saw what they did to South Carolina in the national championship last year. Obviously, no Paige Beckers, but
Yeah.
still, this team really has not missed a beat at all. AZ Fudd's doing AZ Fudd things, and I don't know. Granted, the Big East isn't the strongest for women's basketball, but they're just kind of steamrolling the competition. It's kind of like the UConn of the early to mid 2010s before South Carolina kind of emerged, before Caitlin Clark in Iowa, before LSU, things like that.
Do we think UConn wins the national title? Do we think this is it for Gino?
Ooh, I don't know. And if it is, I doubt Dawn Staley would do this because, you're stepping into a legend's shoes. But I have no idea who UConn would hire to replace Gino, right? Like, would it be throwing a bag at Dawn Staley and saying, you're the second best coach in the game besides Gino, maybe the best in the eyes of some people, right? Come here and continue his legacy? Or is it maybe going with an assistant, promoting from within? I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what UConn is without Gino, because kind of like what we saw with Tennessee after Pat Summitt retired, they really haven't reached those levels again. So is it that kind of a situation where it truly is like a program built for this success, or is it the coach who is shaping the program to that success? And I think whenever Dawn Staley decides it's time to move on from South Carolina and either coach in the NBA, like she was interviewing for this past offseason, or maybe just hanging up from coaching in general, can South Carolina sustain that success in women's basketball? I think those are kind of like two questions that mirror each other.
Yeah.
When you have coaches of that magnitude and coaches of that success.
Definitely in South Carolina's case, I think it's going to be a lot tougher for them to answer the question. I feel like South Carolina's been very good for a decade and a half. UConn's been doing this for almost 3 decades.
Yeah.
Like, they're just a staple. Even if they're not going to win the national title, it's not, they're going to miss the tournament. They're going to be in the tournament. They're in the tournament every year. It's a matter of, okay, are they going to the Final Four at least, or at the Sweet 16? I don't think they've missed a second weekend in like 25 years. That's just how good this Husky team is. Not sure how realistic this is, but if we're concerned about coaches for UConn, there is someone tied to UConn that's currently not doing a whole lot. I don't know if she would maybe want to come back to home, coach her alma mater in a Sue Bird.
Okay.
You have a big name. Yes, she's not really experienced with coaching right now, but you've also seen stuff like NBA, JJ Redick. Would someone like a Sue Bird want to go back? I mean, you have that name tied to that program. I feel like it kind of runs itself. So and I feel like as a fan of the sport, that would just be so cool to see.
True. The only pushback I would say on that is, like, if you look at men's college basketball, largely speaking, hiring a successful alum has not worked out, right? Like, look at the mess that Patrick Ewing stepped into in many regards, that JT3 left him at Georgetown, but that program, outside of that fluke Big East tournament where they were not a very good team but somehow won the Big East tournament and got the auto bid, they struggled tremendously. Ed Cooley still hasn't really found success there after taking over for Ewing. If you look at Penny Hardaway at Memphis, I'd say it's like a mixed bag of success, right? Like, he's recruited really well, but like Memphis really hasn't done much in the tournaments. Of course, there was that FAU issue a few years ago where, was it a foul? Was it not a foul? And FAU wound up making the Final Four, so that could have theoretically been Memphis. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like it's almost a cautionary tale hiring a program legend, because if it doesn't go well, it's that much harder to fire them, right? Because now you're not just firing a coach, you're firing somebody who is forever tied into the program. And for that person, it can do irreparable harm to the way the program views them and fans view them. kind of
I'll
giving
make
it
a
a different perspective, you know?
counterpoint to the counterpoint. Those are all great players at that school. However, they're not the GOAT. And I would just like to say that we never saw Michael Jordan coach UNC. So, could the GOAT of women's basketball change things? Counterpoint to the counterpoint,
Mm, mm.
but I digress. Um, Big shout out to our winners this week: Miami, Duke, Vandy, Florida, and South Carolina. Obviously, we are very excited with the start of college baseball, and we will continue to see how this college basketball season wraps up. We're not covering it as much this year, but hockey, Frozen Four coming right around the corner. We will talk about it a little bit. It will be part of our conference next year. Maybe there will only be 3 teams playing, but 3 teams are playing. And then obviously we have some men's soccer matchups coming this spring, so we'll see kind of how soccer starts up this season. But incredible weekend of sports already. We will be back to our typical Wednesday show on Wednesday. This upcoming week, we will have some predictions. We will have updated basketball standings, and we'll go into it from there. And maybe we'll have another team come up into FBS. So we love sports. We will continue to talk about it each and every week. For Pat, I am TJ. Thanks for listening to the Pac-South podcast.